Good evening, and welcome to the Free Thought Forum. I'm George Zerba, and my co-host.
I'm Jason Fegely.
Good to have you aboard. I guess we should start off with our usual disclaimer that what we say is strictly our opinions and opinions of the callers, and so don't blame WRC-TV if you hear something you don't like here. It's not their fault. Now, this is a call-in show, and we'd appreciate you calling in if you want to talk about atheism or your brand of Christianity or theism of any sort. But I might say that if you plan on calling in because you think you can convert us, you're probably wasting your time, because we're certainly not going to try to convert you, because we know that's a waste of time. Because we all got our opinions, and unless something dramatic happens, you're not going to convert either one of us, and we're probably not going to convert you. But feel free to call in on anything if you want to just voice your opinions or tell us why you think we're all wet or whatever. But, I think one of the things in the news this week, Jason, was the vouchers that Governor Corbett's kind of touting here.
Yeah. I'm not sure where to begin. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about it. I mean, there's some people are for it, some people are against it. Not really sure what unifies the people for or against. I mean, everybody seems to have different reasons.
Well, mostly I think it's a giveaway to mostly Catholic schools. I know the voucher program has been going on for some time in Milwaukee and in Cleveland. And being from Milwaukee, I follow that Journal Sentinel. I read stories once in a while about it. And some of them were just ridiculous. Some of them were just fly-by-night outfits that just set up schools because they'd get these voucher money.
Yeah.
And they had they had teachers that were not qualified. They had schools where kids did nothing but sit around in the basement, looking at drawings or something, and people, one had probably driving a school bus, wasn't even certified to drive a car, much less a bus.
Yeah.
And one of the schools was a Catholic school. I remember reading 3% of the students were Catholic. So basically it was a voucher mill. You get this voucher money, and some of the schools closed in mid-year and left the kids without a school. It's still going on there because there are a lot of people support it, especially the people who are getting the money from it, and those who want to destroy the public schools. That's a lot of it. Is people who want the free money to keep the Catholic schools going, the religious schools going, and people who want to destroy the public schools. A lot of them don't like public education. They think we should be out of that business, and I think that would be disastrous.
Why would people be against public schools?
They feel that should be privatized. Everyone should be, you pay for your schooling, like you would any other product, I guess. I don't have any great insight as to why they say this, but there are people out there who would like to destroy the public schools. And to me, there are a lot of people who can't afford to send their kids to. They can barely afford to put food on the table, much less pay tuition and so on to get kids in school. So that's
well, that's why they want the tax money.
Yeah,
they
that's
can't
right.
afford it, so they want someone else to pay for it.
And for the most part, the voucher money that we've seen would not send these kids to the top schools, and those schools are very expensive. So they would end up with these types of things you had in Milwaukee, with these fly-by-night outfits, but who knows what they're learning? Who knows what's going on there? But that's a sad. I think it's a sad state of affairs that we want to give away take money. Basically, you're taking money away from the public schools, and we need the public schools.
Well, and that's just going to make the public schools worse.
Yes.
I mean, if
right.
the problem is you want to take your kid to a private school because the public schools aren't good enough, that's just going to make the public schools worse.
Right.
What we need is people to care about their neighborhood and their area and want to make it better. Otherwise, the property values drop. All that stuff. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
And we're not going to be competing in a global market with kids who aren't educated.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear people talk about other countries. They're way ahead of us. Where are we ranked now? I think in science and math at 17th, the last I saw.
Yeah, something like that.
And we used to be number 1. And we're losing ground. And the jobs of the future are going to be based on what you know, science and math, and the days when you could get a good job. When I came out of high school, a lot of my friends, I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood, they went to work at factories, and you made good money. You could support a family on a factory income, but And nowadays, those factory jobs are pretty much leaving. If you're not
Yeah.
into technology, you're left behind.
Yeah.
And we can't have a whole generation of kids who just can't compete in the global market. That's not how America's going to stay number one. These people who tout us as American exceptionalism, well, we're losing that exceptionalism if we're not keeping up with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
It's a sad state of affairs, I think. If anyone wants to comment on that, feel free to give us a call. See our number up there. It's 846-5067 if you're local. If you're not, now Jason, what about this star 82? So what the heck? What is that?
I don't know. I had to ask about that too.
Yeah, now see, I'm a good example of people technologically way behind. I've barely moved into the 20th century, much less the 21st. So,
I don't know if that has to do with like the network, the phone system here. Or I don't know what that is, but
yeah,
I guess you have to dial.
If you're local, just call us, and
yeah,
you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. One of the things I think is weird about the school vouchers is, like, if the argument for them is people want to, if they're paying taxes, they want the choice to put their kid in whatever school they want. For one, you make that decision when you buy your home, when you decide where to live. That's already what we're doing. You already have that choice.
Yeah,
if you can't afford to live in a more expensive area, then you don't get to live in a more expensive area. I mean, that's just what it is. But then the other thing is, if we have public transportation, so if you want a subsidy to take your kid to private school, should we get subsidies for owning our own cars? I mean, that's ridiculous. No one would.
Yeah, no one would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously, why should the government buy you a car,
Right.
or give you a big voucher
yeah.
for a car?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. You mentioned the real estate. That's a lot of people buy real estate based on where the kids go to school. That's a big part of it.
That's like the first thing on the MLS, when you look at the housing, the information sheets. That's one of the very first things on there is what school district is. Yeah. That's important.
And you can understand that. As far as Governor Corbett in his speech referred to underperforming schools. Well, the answer to me is get those schools performing up to standard.
Yeah.
Get them all up to standard.
Giving up.
Yeah.
Well, screw it. We'll just go to some other school.
And then for the kids whose parents don't have the gumption to get up and apply for these vouchers or really don't care about their education, that school will be even worse now. Those kids will be even further behind.
Yeah.
A lot of kids start off life kind of behind the eight ball with the family they're born into, and we're putting them further behind by not giving them quality schools.
Yeah.
They're not giving them a quality education. We think that's going down the wrong path, and mostly you see people in favor of this are religious people. Most it's going to go to religious schools.
Well, there was in the Sunday paper, the York Daily Record. It was on the front page, was the school voucher program, and I wanted to bring it with me, but I forgot. But in the article, there wasn't so much talk about religion. The conflicts over this topic concerning religious education weren't so much the focus of the article. Most of it was arguments for or against that didn't have anything to do with religion, and like the teachers' unions, they were like, well, this is these private schools just block teachers' unions. They just won't tolerate a union. There was all these other arguments that I thought were very interesting. So if someone could call in and elaborate some of the arguments in favor for the voucher program, that would be nice to hear. But yeah, the one that comes immediately to my mind is you want money to send your kid to a religious school that charges too much and can't stay open or whatever.
Yeah, that's because I know a lot of Catholic schools, especially in Baltimore, a lot of them are closing.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the population anymore. Yeah. And one thing you hear about private schools do a better job than public schools. Well, they've got some advantages. A public school, you move in that neighborhood, you send your child to a public school, they've got to take them. A private school doesn't.
Yeah.
If your child's a troublemaker or performing, they can kick them out.
Yeah.
So naturally, they would have higher achievement level.
Yeah.
They've got
They filter.
Yeah, they filter it
their
out.
results are going to be better. And that's the other thing is just because you get this subsidy doesn't mean your kid's going to be accepted
Right.
to these schools.
Right.
I mean, they have.
Yeah.
They're a business, so
Right.
they have
Yeah.
certain goals that they need to meet for their shareholders or whatever it would be.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. They're not all getting in. They think they're all going to end up at these private schools. Well, no, they're not. A lot of them are going to be left back at that public school, which is now weaker than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
That's sad.
And
Sad state of affairs.
The one argument seemed to be people just wanted to have the choice.
Yes.
Well, in Michigan, they have a school choice program. I'm not exactly clear on how it works, but you pay like if you lived in if we were doing this in York or in Pennsylvania, period. If you lived in Eastern School District and wanted to go to Spring Grove, you would have to set up the transportation for your kid every day, but you would be able to do that. You would pay like $1 tuition a year or something like that, or $1. I don't remember how it worked. But then your child could go to whatever school was within a reasonable distance that you could get them there. But it was public school. It wasn't private. Now I don't know how that works with property school taxes and things like that. I don't know how they work that. But then again, Michigan isn't necessarily the best example of how to a fiscal program that actually works for a state. So that might have something to do with that.
Yeah, they've got their problems, but then all states do pretty much.
Yeah.
With the economy slumping, and I read today that the misery index is up. That's the combination of inflation and the unemployment rate. So it's up as high as it's been in, I think it's 30 years. So that's what they base your misery on, And we have a lot of miserable people, don't we? Because times are tough.
Yeah, they're out in the streets. They're either the Tea Party or the Occupy people.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Eric Cantor called the Wall Street protesters a mob. But he doesn't call the Tea Party a mob.
Yeah.
It depends, I guess, which side of the fence you're on, whether they're a mob or whether they're citizens voicing their opinions.
That whole thing is so crazy because it very obviously looks a lot like the Tea Party. The only difference is the age. That's literally like the first thing that you're going to notice for a while is the main difference is basically just age. They both don't like what the banks did. Yeah. They both don't like the government bailing out these private. They, it for the most part. And then the other thing is like we are the 99%. Like I don't see why this should be divided along party lines. Like on Facebook and online, it does seem to be represented. The Tea Party is supposed to be where all the conservatives want to go, and the Occupy people, the Occupy Wall Street people are for liberals apparently. Right. And some of the news footage shows what they have written on their signs and stuff, and it is like a crazy mix of just a crazy mix of different ideas and stuff. Yeah. But for the most part, it's the same sort of rage, this populist rage against corporations and people that are controlling society without losing anything. And the rest of us are all losing. We're all the ones that keep losing.
Yeah. Well, rage is the right word, but there's a lot of rage out there on both sides of the political spectrum. People angry over one thing or another, and I understand a lot of the Occupy Wall Street people. They're upset over the banks that we bailed them out. Oh, yeah. I mean, they made tremendous mistakes. They took these risky loan things and guarantees and things that most of us don't understand, and this housing bubble, they created this, they made their money, and then now they're too big to fail, we've got to bail them out, and they seem to show no gratitude toward us, because now they're going to, like Bank of America is going to charge you $5 for your debit card, and that's getting a lot of flack.
Yeah. And immediately after the bailouts, I mean, if you look at, now that there are, the general anti-corporation kind of rhetoric that's going on right now isn't always the best. I mean, because there are good corporations out there that are trying to be good citizens. Now, I don't think a corporation can be a citizen. It shouldn't hold that
Well, the
place.
Supreme Court
But
said otherwise.
yeah, but they are good, like
Yeah.
Starbucks or Ford. I mean, look at how Ford managed themselves after the horrible things that happened
Yeah.
with the car companies. They got their act together and started. You know, they trimmed the fat. They got everything back together pretty well, and paid all their money back to the
Yeah, that's
government
what
like
I'm
as
saying.
soon as they could. They
Yeah.
did it. Whereas you see Goldman Sachs or Bank of America, they got these bailouts, and then a couple months later turned around and gave $1 million bonuses to their people.
That frosts people too. That's,
Yeah, I mean that was, they clearly just do not care. They don't relate to the regular person. They don't relate to the 99% of us, and the rest of us are looking at it like, well, what about us that lost our pensions and our houses because of you guys? No one's bailing us out.
That's right.
Where's my bonus at?
Yeah,
You know.
Yeah. You know, it seems to me there's a lot of people in our society who live in their little worlds with just their people.
Yeah.
And I imagine the Wall Street crowd, they hang around with all Wall Street crowd people, and they all think everybody lives like this. Everybody deserves a $1 million bonus, even though you lost money and the company had to be bailed out. You know, most of us, if we do a lousy job, we either get a pay cut or laid off. You know, and but it does seem that a lot of religious people live in little sects where they think everyone is has the same view they do, and they don't understand there's a diversity in this country. There's different people. Different ideas.
And that can happen. That's very easy to happen too. Especially, like, did you ever see that movie, The Village, by?
I don't think I saw that.
It's the guy who directed The Sixth Sense.
M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, M. Night Shyamalan. I always want to say Shyamalama because to look at the way his name is spelled, it's ridiculous. But
I don't think I saw that.
Well, that movie. I mean, the basic premise is these people live in this place. It looks like it's, I don't know, the 1700s or something, and I mean they're basically living like Amish folks, I guess, like that, like in the late 1700s, and they're doing it because they modern people created this place. I'm totally giving spoilers away. I'm ruining the movie, so if you haven't seen it, but it turns out that they created this utopia, what they thought would be a utopia, to protect their children and stuff from the modern world that they thought wasn't doing so well. And you know, the people growing up in that situation, that's just what they thought the world was. You know, if you aren't exposed to diversity, like you said, then you're going to think that everybody thinks the same way as you. Like me growing up, I wasn't exposed to the only religious extremism I had seen was on TV and movies. So I thought, you know, that's just crazy people. That's not real, you know. I mean,
that's just movies.
Yeah, or that it's extremely rare. You know, like David Koresh is one in a 300 million. You know, like it's not going to happen very often. But then you get a little older and you start meeting people, and you find out there are crazy people out there.
How many more out there? That's
But you know, living in that bubble isn't good, especially when it's these rich people who are so so removed from regular day-to-day hustles that regular people have to deal with.
Yes, they. I heard was it Joan Rivers speaking after her husband committed suicide some years ago, and she was saying, "Oh yeah, I had no money." And you're probably multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
It's for you. There's no money. You know, and so it's all in your perspective, isn't it? Some people would probably love to have her life, and she was despairing that there were people who, I think of a comedian that recently committed suicide. No, he had a great life, and you commit suicide. What's wrong with it? Your perspective on things is different, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, you meet a lot of those people. This brings up a subject that I had this weekend. If you go to our booths, we have booths at various fairs. We were at the Pumpkin Fest this last weekend, and I was only there for a couple of hours on Sunday. But we had someone come up, and oftentimes they want to tell us their story about why they know God exists. And oftentimes, by the way, they tell long, boring stories with a lot of extraneous details that you don't need. You don't need to hear. But this one fellow came up. He knows God exists. Here's why he knows. He was praying to God, saying, "Do you really exist? Give me a sign that you really exist." And he goes on and on about this. Later on that day, he gets a call from his son. He just rear-ended somebody on Route 39. for some reason he had to go on about Route 39. I don't know why that was important, but his son rear-ended a car, and he drove over there, and the car was totaled, and his son was standing there, and his son was no scratches. He's just fine. That's God sending him a sign. Well, the first thing I think atheists say is, why did God have to create it? Couldn't he just stop the accident?
Yeah.
But, when I thought about it, I thought, well, wait a minute. Now, he rear-ended somebody. Now, these people were obviously heading down the road, going somewhere, and all of a sudden this guy rear-ends them. Now, they're inconvenienced because they've got to stop, they've got to wait for the police to come, and the car was totaled, the car behind him, so I assume there was substantial damage to that car. They've got to go get that car repaired, they've got to go through the insurance hassle. If you've ever dealt with them, they try to lowball you on the repair, and they try to do cheap stuff. So they got to go through all this hassle. And the reason they've got to go through all this was because supposedly God was trying to send this man a lesson. Wait a minute, why is he inconveniencing all these other people? They didn't do anything. They were just driving down the road. They were probably now late for their appointment or wherever they were going. Who knows? It may have ruined their day, may have ruined their week.
Maybe that's what this whole Wall Street thing is. God is he's creating a disaster, and then to prove to the people who didn't lose their homes that he does exist.
Yeah, maybe that's
like all these people. The world economy was crashed just to show a couple people who didn't lose their homes that there is a God.
Well, I
and everybody else, too bad.
When I thought of this gentleman, I thought, how narcissistic of you to think that God is doing something just for you. He's creating, he's endangering those people in the car. He said none of them were hurt, which was lucky, but they could have been. And, and then the police got to respond. That may take them away from some other situation where they could have been helping someone. And, there's just a whole...
So it's basically a false alarm for the police since no one was hurt.
Yeah. But it's all about him. God is doing it just for him. And we've heard that kind of story before. God's showing me, and he did this thing. Or you hear, I was going to get on a plane, and I didn't get on the plane because something happened, and the plane crashed, and all the people died. Well, wait a minute. Did God kill all those people just to show you that he wanted you to live?
How many people have to die for you?
Yeah. I mean, that's...
I guess Jesus dying wasn't enough. He's got to kill a couple more.
But the people who think that this stuff is all directed at them, and as far as God wants to send you a sign, my goodness, we've got all kinds of communication devices now. Can't he call your cell phone? Can't he send you an email?
Yeah.
Can't he do something other than crashing into people and having planes crash and having boats sink and other things?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand how you can... Well, I guess if you're, as I said, narcissistic, you think the world revolves around you, you can think that it's all about you, and they're doing all this just for you. But I thought, how inconvenient.
And it seems like the more you know about the world, like science and physics and weather, anything, the more you know about stuff, the more you realize how less significant you are. You are not the center of the universe. If you wash your car, more leaves are going to fall on it, in an hour. So that's not a sign for you. The water isn't going to make some kind of shield around your car just for you. The more you know, more educated people would have something like that happen to them, I guess, and maybe not educated, but insightful, or people who have a greater understanding about, the world doesn't revolve around me. People who are less narcissistic in that sense, I guess maybe learning more makes you less narcissistic, being more understanding about the world.
Yeah, I think so. Learning, being exposed to more things. People think the world... Well, Charles de Gaulle once said, the cemeteries are filled with indispensable people and indispensable men. And that's true. Someday you're going to die and the world's going to go on without you.
Yeah.
That's the way it's going to be, you think you're so important, but you're just another guy.
Yeah. I think that idea actually is scary for people, though. Like, they don't want to think that... Well, I think the implication is, to some people, that what you're saying is my life isn't important, or what I do doesn't matter. Well, and then, a humanist would say it matters as much as you decide it matters, like you give it whatever purpose that you decide to give it, which is in the end what everybody's doing anyway, whether you're religious or not. Religious people are saying that they have a purpose just as much as an atheist is saying that they have a purpose. They've just invented a fake thing to attribute that purpose to, whereas the atheist just understands that, well, I decided that having this brand phone over that brand phone was more purposeful for me, or coming here today to do this TV show was my purpose for today, rather than a message from the boogeyman or whatever.
Well, I think the bottom line is we all have a certain importance in the world, but let's not get too carried away with ourselves. You know, the world will go on without us.
Yeah,
it goes on without everyone. And yes, we're here, and yes, we rather if we work for a living, our jobs are probably at a level of importance, some more than others, but we all contribute to the world, and although some people have to wonder if they have any value at all, you know.
Well, they would prefer to have, rather than contribute, they would rather have a school voucher program that'll put them in a better lot in life, instead of working for it.
But there's a lot of things about the way theists think and feel that we just don't understand.
Yeah, well, and even there, I mean, to think that some outside source will move the world for you, and then that gets translated into thinking the government should just give you money to go wherever you want to go for school. That's a type of entitlement sort of idea. If I believe and have faith, then I'm entitled to certain things, to self-righteousness and condemnation of others, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it seems to me that a lot of the people who are in favor of vouchers are very right-wing, who are opposed to government getting involved in anything.
Yeah.
But wait a minute, now you want the government to send pay for your kids to go to school.
Yeah.
And also the other things that they want the government out of our lives, but yet if two people of the same sex go in the bedroom together, they want to be there.
Yeah, then the government's got to step in.
Yeah, they want the government to step in then. Or if a woman goes into a doctor's office and says, I think I need an abortion, they want to step in there. Why are they, what happened to get the government out of my life? That seems to have changed all of a sudden. Now they want the government in. The bottom line of this is that they want the government enforcing their morality on the rest of us.
That's what it comes down
to. And then other things just step out of the way.
They want to win an ideological war for their ego. They want to be able to say, my self-righteousness is justified by making something in the world that will physically support it, that you can point to. Yeah, see, the government, it's just like with people saying, well, America's a Christian nation because so-and-so who was alive at the time when they started the country happened to have a Bible. So that means the entire country is a Christian nation, or whatever. They want to have this justification for their own personal idea, because they think they're that important.
Yeah, and they come up with these quotes. I understand this historian David Barton, who's a Christian historian, that many of his books he puts things in there that later he has to retract and say they were not true. And a lot of the quotes you hear, if you research them, you hear people say, no, Thomas Jefferson never said that, or things like that. I mean, it's, they're just made up.
Yeah.
And if it sounds good, and people believe it. If they hear it from a source that they like, they believe it.
Yeah.
And if they hear it from a source they don't like, they don't believe it. So, but people pretty much believe whatever they want to believe. And I've also seen studies that said that the more you listen to like either left-wing or right-wing TV, like if you're of that ilk, it just reinforces your opinions.
Oh, yeah. We have that problem. I just watched a video. Have you heard of TED Talks?
No.
That's something everyone should probably check out. It's TED Talks.
Okay.
It's top designers or educators or scientists or researchers in whatever field they're in. They come in and give a 17-minute talk, and I mean it's top people but there was this one I just watched the other day. This guy was talking about the problems with the internet being so personalized now. One day he noticed that on Facebook, all of his conservative friends stopped. They weren't in his news feed anymore, and he was like, well, why am I not seeing any conservative ideas or statements or anything in my news feed anymore? Well, it's because Facebook has these algorithms about what you click on and what types of things you like, and looks at your types of movies you like, the books you like, the different pages you become a fan of, all these things like that, and then it tries to cater your internet experience to what it thinks you will like the most.
Yeah.
But some people like to hear what the other side is saying so that they don't fall into that
Right.
trap, you know. And Google does the same thing. Like your search results on your computer will be different than my search results if we search for the same thing, because everywhere is trying to cater everything to you personally to try and maximize your experience as far as it thinks you would like, and then also ad revenue. You know, I mean, why?
Yeah.
If you definitely aren't interested in Toyotas, then they don't want to waste their time
Right.
advertising to you. But you know, it's extremely important that we do hear what the other side is saying, and that we do think critically about what our side is saying, and you know, and that's where I run into problems. Like, you know, I kind of relate to both the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street on certain things, but you have to be critical of everything. You know, you have to think what is relevant and what isn't, what isn't. You know, and what does it make sense? Are these school vouchers a good idea or not? I can see, you know, the idea that people want to have the choice to send their kids to wherever, but you got to pay for that. I mean, why should other people's tax dollars go to doing that? You know, and that's the problem. And tax dollars probably shouldn't go towards religious situations, because we
have separation of church and state.
yeah, and not every church has equal access to just build schools.
Right.
You know, I mean that's just it's not, you get into a class warfare thing there within religion, you know, where rich religions will be able to do this and be able to take taxpayer money, whereas poor religions won't be able to. You know, the Amish aren't going to get any money from this. You know, they're not going to get to do that. That's just not going to happen, and that's not necessarily fair. And as far as the government it has to be fair in how it treats everybody.
Yes, we're all treated equally. Should be treated equally.
So what would end up happening is Catholics would be getting, because they have a school system,
right.
They would be getting favored
by
the government, but just by default, and that's not fair to the religious. That's the other people that aren't Catholic.
Yeah, most grade schools anywhere religious are Catholic, aren't they?
I would assume most private.
They
religious
started their
schools.
own schools because I guess they felt they were discriminated against in the public schools. So that happened years ago. I'm no historian on that, so
Yeah.
my wife could tell you more, but she's busy.
Yeah.
But you know, once again, people just they live in these little worlds where they're all just mingling with their own type. As a matter of fact, I saw something a few months ago about the cable TV, Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. Now, if you ask me, CNN is right in the middle. Fox is right wing, MSNBC is left wing. Yeah. CNN was losing viewership to the other two, which to me is a bad sign, because it means more people are going to the extremes. They're not going the middle of the road people. And it's funny how your perspective on things, if you've ever taken a political science class, we show you the line with the person on the left and the person on the right and one in the middle, and we say, the person on the right, what does he say to that guy in the middle? He calls him a liberal. The guy on the left, he calls him a conservative. You know? Well, that's pretty much what we've got now. We've got people, you know, saying that CNN's they're liberal or they're conservative. Well, no, they're right in the middle. You know? And I shouldn't complain, because we watch mainly MSNBC. We're liberals. We're pretty liberal. So.
I don't really watch. Well, I don't watch it. I end up watching more of Fox because it's just more entertaining to me to see the crazy things that they'll. Because they are outrageous. That is ridiculous. Half the stuff they say. Yeah. But CNN is just. They have some kind of neat educational things. Like the one girl goes to other countries and investigates. You know, does a special on this thing or not. Kind of like the stuff Geraldo does on Fox, except less outrageous. Or less ideological, anyway. The Fox stuff tends to be ideological. CNN tends to not be ideological in their reporting, whereas MSNBC tends to be on the left. Yeah. But it's more entertaining now to have a circus than to just report facts. You know?
Yeah. And you know, to call people conservative and liberal, and you know, like I guess people would consider me a liberal, but I have some ideas that are pretty conservative. I think, like crime and punishment. I'm no liberal. I'm in favor of the death penalty. I know I wouldn't cheer like the people did at that debate with Perry. I wouldn't be cheering that we put people to death. I think it's a sad thing that we have to.
That's
but there
how
are some
I feel.
people society should rid us of them.
I think people that are, like, I mean, I'm the same way. Like, it's regrettable that things have to
Yeah.
get that far.
Yes.
That is what needs to be done. But things do go that far. That is where we need to go. You know, and that's the case. Now, on the other hand, there should be a lot of checks and balances to make sure it's the right person, obviously.
Right.
But I think that option needs to be there. It should just be, and I'm kind of the same way with like abortion. Like that option needs to be there, but it should be regrettable. I don't think anybody's pro-abortion. No, people aren't pro-death penalty. I don't want everybody to be killed. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
you're bringing up abortion. That's people say you're pro-abortion. No, we're pro-choice. We're not pro. You don't run around telling pregnant women get an abortion. You know, I mean, we don't yell at them on the street. You know.
Although, I mean, had Osama bin Laden been aborted, we would have 3,000 more people and 2 more buildings in New York City. I mean, abortion would have saved us a lot of grief right there.
You know, oftentimes the anti-choice people would bring that type of thing up. What if Beethoven's mother had had an abortion?
Yeah.
What if Hitler's mother had had an abortion?
Yeah.
I mean, that would have worked out. Speaking of Hitler, you hear Hank Williams mentioning Obama and Hitler. You know, to me, when you say the name Hitler, he is alone in his evilness.
Yeah.
That he stands alone. And when you bring up that name, you can't.
Well, he's an extreme. He's an extreme example of what a human is capable of.
Yeah, well, personally, I think Hank Williams should stick to singing and forget about political stuff. Just sing your country songs and you know.
Saturday Night Live did a funny parody of that.
I did see
week.
that.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Well, but once again, you bring up the name, and other people have brought it up. I think
people
it's
do all
wrong
the time,
in every occasion. It's just wrong, because he is just so singularly evil that he stands alone. Don't bring him up. Don't compare him. Maybe there are people out there who would be as evil as Hitler if he had the power, but we can't prove that. So that you should not bring up his name. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
It's
well, he's an extreme case, and it's just very rare that whoever you're talking to or whatever you're talking about is that extreme.
Yes.
You know, like and it's like what we do with these, the right and the left, and the Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party or whatever it would be. Everybody, like you were saying, or like you said with the person standing in the middle, the guy on the right's calling him a leftist.
Yeah.
We exaggerate these things to further our own perspectives, to justify our own outlooks on things.
You know, what happened to live and let live? You know, we're not all the same. You know?
Yeah.
What a dull world it would be if we were all the same.
Yeah.
Boy, we'd be pretty sorry if that happened.
Yeah.
You know, all fought the line. And the people who want to force their views on us, whether the right or the left, we need to silence them.
Well, that's, I think, the thing that I like. One of the main reasons I support the separation of church and state is because it protects everybody. Like, the only people that are against it are people who want their view to be legislated.
Right.
You know, that's what they want, and we can't. If you let, okay, all right, fine. You have to understand if you get rid of the separation of church and state, and Mitt Romney gets elected, he's a Mormon.
Yeah.
Let's say he's a lot more crazier than he is as far as power hungry or ideological or whatever like that. Because I don't think he would do this, but let's say he were more like Hitler. I mean, this is how you argue, is you go with some extreme. But
that's extreme.
So then you get a Mormon elected, and they go and make Mormonism more favored in all the government programs and things like that. Somehow the Mormon church is getting more money and all this and that. Well, that's not going to make Presbyterians happy. That's not, Baptists ain't going to be happy with that. That's what we're talking about. When we're talking about separation of church and state, that is what we're talking about. Mormons believe some crazy, crazy things.
Yeah.
And just because you don't believe it doesn't mean the things you believe aren't just as crazy. But at any rate, it's just better for everybody involved if we just don't bring any of that into the legislation.
Right. Well, as many people have pointed out, the separation of church and state has helped the churches as much as the state.
Oh my God, yeah.
We're one of the most religious
countries. We have so many more religions in America than most other countries, or at least compared to like 200 years ago. Yeah. I mean, they just the diversity in a single country of religious views was nothing compared to America, because we have this separation of church and state where religion can thrive and can grow and die or whatever happens.
And a lot of religious people understand that if you get the government involved, they start to tell you what to do.
Yep.
And if we're funding something, we should tell you what to do.
Yeah.
If we're footing the bill, we get to tell you what you can and can't do. Now, if we're not footing the bill, you're on your own. You can pretty much do what you want.
As long as you're not hurting anybody.
Well, you're not violating any laws or hurting anyone. Then you're okay. But so I think a lot of people got what they wanted, which was the government actively involved in churches. They would end up regretting it.
Oh yeah, and the churches would end up with more splits, more divisions, branching off. That's exactly
enough
what
already. How many splits? How many religions do we have?
But just the Baptists. I mean, they're breaking their history of splitting off and splitting off and splitting off and splitting off. But that's what happened, in Europe with all those churches. The government gets involved, and then they would, whatever monarch was in charge wanted this, so that had to be written into the dogma or the doctrines or whatever, or the state church. Well, then somebody in the church had the conscience, and free will and criticism to say, well, that's ridiculous. Well, he was either going to get, imprisoned, or he would have to get a big flock behind him that would keep him protected, and then the king would have to change or whatever. But that's what you run into if you don't keep a separation church and state.
You look at all the religious people who are way out there, the fanatics, who criticize other religions. Well, like for instance, this Pastor Jeffress calling Mormonism a cult. You believe in the same God. You call that a cult, and other religions too. Those people are no damn good. They believe one little aspect of it that we don't believe, and don't you folks see that you're pretty much all on the same page?
Yeah.
You're just a couple, you're singing the same tune, just a few notes off here and there.
Yeah.
But they can't seem to get along.
Yeah.
And look at like in Ireland, you have the Catholics and the Protestants killing each other. Is that what we want here? We want people to get to that point where the government prefers one over the other, and so they retaliate. And I look at even in the Muslims, Sunni and Shiite, they kill each other. And look at the system we've got. We don't have people killing people for religious reasons for the most part. I don't know. There might be some out there. I've never heard of it though.
But it's few and far between.
Yeah. But we don't have that kind of hatred for each other. We shouldn't anyway. You just wonder what gets people that riled up that they can want to kill somebody because there's a different religion.
Well, I guess maybe because, they identify with. Religious ideas are really emotional. They're very close to the person's emotional. Because it's like existential ideas, concerns about conscience and the death and their family members that they love and things like that. So they'll defend it, and they will get offended if you question it and all these things, or if you tell them that, well, no, that actually means you're going to go to hell. Well, that's nope, they're not going to accept that.
Well, speaking of that, when I was growing up, I was a Lutheran, and in a neighborhood there were a lot of Catholics in it, and I was often told, Lutherans were often told by the Catholics, we're going to hell because you're not Catholic. So I don't know where they learned that from. I think they learned that from the nuns, though. Although I did have a friend who went to Catholic high school in Baltimore, and he told me that when we got to high school, the priests there, mostly in grade school, you got the nuns teaching you, and you got there to the high school, they said, look, forget all the stuff the nuns taught you, we're going to tell you the real stuff. So even the priests, I think, know that the nuns are a little goofy with some of the stuff they told kids, because apparently that's where they were getting it from. That I can't imagine where else they were getting this from, that we're all going to hell because we're not Catholic. So and hopefully that has slowed down. I don't know. Not being involved in religious things, I don't know if kids hear that kind of thing anymore.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to like what you were saying about exposure to diversity. Like now, with the internet, kids are so much more connected to the rest of the world than they were, just 10 years ago. So everybody's exposed to more TV shows and more books and more music and more movies. And like, it's so hard to find someone who has seen most of the same movies as you and read the same books and likes or has even aware of the same music artists that you like. Everybody gets to kind of go down their own rabbit hole on the internet, and and experience drastically different things, that may help what you were saying earlier about that exposure to diversity, that thinking that other people will go to hell or whatever. I mean, if you realize, which I think people will, when they're in their teens or whatever, and they start to realize that they're surrounded by people that have very different beliefs, but they also like Red Hot Chili Peppers or whatever, like they'll be more tolerant of them because they understand that the world is just that diverse. You can't. It's very hard to have a bubble anymore.
Yeah, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and my neighborhood we were limited to just the people in the neighborhood. We had TV, we saw other things, but that wasn't real. Now with the internet, kids are exposed to all kinds of things, some good, some bad, I think. But back then we knew there were other parts of the world and other parts of the country, but pretty much what I saw, those were the regular folks. Wasn't everybody like that,
Yeah.
You come to find out that no, they're not, When you graduate, you go to local grade school, and then you go to high school, and you meet more kids from other neighborhoods, and they're different, Then you go to college, and there's even more people there that are even more different. And they're getting that exposure kind of like earlier now, because they're on the internet, they're exposed to all kinds of things, different cultures, and of course all kids now, a lot of people my age or older than me say, I don't know how to use a computer.
Yeah.
You get some 5-year-old, he knows how to use a computer. They get on it, and they know exactly. Some of the older folks are, oh, this is scary. What do we do here?
Yeah.
Am I going to break it?
Yeah.
But nowadays, if you don't have computer training, and that's what we need, for instance, in our public schools, we need computers and all kinds of scientific. We need those things. Kids are not going to compete without that.
Yeah.
So, and I think going back to the vouchers, that's going to take away money from the public schools.
Yeah.
I don't see how it cannot. Some people claim
it
doesn't, but it's got to. There's only so much money out there.
Yeah.
And
well, here he says that students in schools from households with incomes at or under 130% of the federal poverty level would be allowed to take the per student state subsidy that their district receives for that student and apply it to tuition. So, I mean,
there it is.
Yeah, that per student, if that kid leaves, so does that money.
Yeah.
But I guess that's just for federal. I don't know. No, I mean, this would have to be state because it was the governor. I don't know. I'm not sure of the details, but yeah, I mean, they would be losing some money.
Yeah, and once again, they're hurting the public schools. But then some people, that's their goal. It seems to me that a lot of things that are going on politically here, we kind of hide the motives.
Yeah.
We, for instance, now there's some states that are pushing voter ID at the ballot box, and they say, well, we don't want voter fraud, and we got to have people show identification. Let's stop beating around the bush. What this is about is when the poor people vote Democratic, so the Republican Party wants to stop them from voting. That's what it's about. And we're just beating around the bush here and not getting, trying to this backdoor thing, saying, well, it's about voter fraud. Well, how many fraudulent voters are out there? You hear there's very little of that.
And the only time, I mean, that I in recent memory about where voter fraud was an issue was Florida, which it's usually red states, isn't it?
Yeah. And now there used to be a system like, for instance, in Chicago, you could buy votes. Really, you can't do that much anymore. See, because what would happen then now in Chicago? This is when they had ballots, paper ballots. But you would get somebody who you want, usually a wino or some guy down there, and you pay him. What you would do is you would get a ballot, and you would mark it. And then this fellow would put it in his pocket and go in and vote. They would give him a new ballot. He would then go and switch the ballots and turn in the ballot that you've already marked. Now, he didn't get paid until he gave you the blank ballot, so you could then fill it out for the next person. So, but you can't now, there's no way to guarantee that if I pay you $5 to go vote the way I say, that you will, because you'll be in there in the punch screen. How will I know what you're punching?
Yeah.
And probably wouldn't even know if you're a down and out guy. You probably don't know or don't care. You'll just go in there and punch a couple buttons and leave. So it's pretty hard to do that kind of fraud. And as far as undocumented aliens voting and things, they're trying to stay out of the public eye. They're not. They don't want to bring any attention to themselves. They're not. They're going to do anything they can to stay away from that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, it's hard enough to get legal Americans to vote.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
idea that there are people coming over just to mess with our votes, like,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think.
No,
that's,
they're not.
why would they? Why?
Yeah, they'd have. It's a paranoia from some people think that
Yeah.
everyone is out to get them. You know, but yeah, Americans, as a matter of fact, our voting. How many people vote in the last election? Was it 50% in the last presidential election? That's really
It was
sad.
a record.
And that was a sad figure. And there are countries where you hear 85–90% of the population votes, and this is eligible voters. We have a lot of people in this country who don't even register to vote.
Yeah.
Now, one of the reasons I've heard for not registering to vote was I've heard people say that, well, that's how they pick you for jury duty, so they don't want to be picked for jury duty, so they don't register to vote. Well, I don't know how true that is. I don't know where they get from the
Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not
jury
either.
pool. I think they pick that from a lot of different sources. But there are people who don't vote just for that reason. And
why wouldn't you want to be on a jury? It sounds fun to me.
Yeah.
I love Law and Order.
Well, I had jury duty a couple of years ago, and I did not get picked for a jury. Now, it's interesting that when I came in, the first trial I came in, the jury pool walks in, and there was a guy sitting there, the defendant, and to say he was dressed like a criminal, and I kind of I looked at him, and I think the attorney saw me look, and he struck me from the jury pool right away.
Yeah.
And also the fact that when they swore you in, I stood up and said, I'm an atheist, I don't swear to God, and they had to do a special swearing. So I don't know if that's why, but I was called twice to sit in, and was not picked either time. So I don't know if it was because I was an atheist or because I gave the guy the funny look who I as walking in, I guess if I'd have been true to them, I would have said, look, I'm going to vote this guy's guilty. That's just the way he's dressed. He looks guilty. They probably didn't want me on the jury. The prosecutor probably did. Probably if they'd have known that, they would have probably been glad to have me on there. But I didn't get picked. But yeah, to me, that was a civic duty. And if we don't do it, one of the complaints about the jury system is people say, look, the only people on juries are people who are too dumb to get out of jury duty. So that's not a good sign, right? We want intelligent people. Although the defense attorney, we did hear F. Lee Bailey, the famous defense attorney, speak some years ago. And he said the job of the defense attorney is to get the 12 dumbest people he can on the jury, because dumb people are easy to sway. They're easy to fool. And in a jury, in a criminal case, all you have to do is prove reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
And if you're not a very bright person, you can be easily.
Which is, you just have to get them. You have to make sure they are still confused.
Yeah, yeah. Which is kind of easy to do for people that aren't that bright. And that's just our opinion, who's bright and who's not.
Yeah.
So, but there, of course, are experts in jury selection who teach defense attorneys how to pick the jury. So, but the cases I was involved in, I think, were small enough that I don't think they had anything like that. But it's sad that so many people don't want to participate in our elections. To me, because you hear that people fought for our right to do this, but you're not voting.
Yeah.
You don't even bother. You don't bother getting up and going out and casting your ballot. And then again, there are some people I think maybe it's better that you don't vote. Maybe you should stay home, because we don't need your opinion in the public place here.
Well, a lot of people say it's not going to matter anyway.
Yeah.
So why bother? Well, all right. I mean, I don't know what to say to that personally, but and then the system is all messed up. Like again with the Occupy Wall Street thing, these rich corporations have much more access to our legislators than any of us do.
Yep.
We get to elect them in, but that's the only ones we get to choose from are the ones that were able to get the support of these corporations anyway, or unions or whatever. Because it costs a lot of money to run for office, no matter what it is. That money's got to come from somewhere. And some promises had to be made.
Yep, and the people making the big contributions, they get the big say in what goes on.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, corporations are writing the laws. They literally write laws that get passed.
Yeah, the lobbyists for them, a lot of the laws, they're direct. They write it and the legislator to introduce this. So
that should, I'm against that. I mean, that's. I think there should be reform for how lobbying works. But I mean, I don't know if Occupy Wall Street has gotten that far into a list of demands that they.
Well, I understand that Occupy Wall Street, they don't really have a coherent,
Yeah.
policy. Yet they're just kind of angry people, but angry at the
Yeah,
banks and
just-
the rich
yeah.
people, the 1% making all the money.
Yeah, it's not
so-
very organized from what I understand.
Yeah, which is.
Which makes it hard to get behind.
Yes,
But I
it does.
sympathize with them, but
Yeah,
show me some sort of.
Yeah, plan.
Yeah, yeah,
What do you
yeah.
want us to do? If you ever worked in customer service, sometimes you get in that position where you get somebody complaining. They're just complaining. You finally
Yeah.
you got to say, well, what do you want me to do? And they say, a lot of times they don't say anything intelligent.
I just wanted you to know that I'm upset. I was
Yeah,
like, well,
okay.
Okay.
I gathered that, because you've been yelling at me for 5 minutes. So, yeah, I gathered you're upset.
Yeah.
So that can be frustrating. But and I think the Tea Party is the same thing. There are a lot of angry people. It just seems like we have a lot of angry people in this country, on the left and the right. And I'm not sure any of them have a really coherent plan either. I mean, the Tea Party wants to cut taxes. Well, what do you want to cut?
Yeah, and the
cut
thing is
spending,
that both of those groups are that's, I mean, the Occupy people, they're the ones that were smart enough to say we're the 99%, but that includes the Tea Party people. They are all the same people, basically. They're both groups that are upset with the way things are going, because neither of those groups have a say in how things are going.
That's right.
I mean, these people, we have little control over the system that we're supposed to be directly controlling. The only way to control it is to get a really successful business plan and build that into a giant corporation that then can afford lobbyists to write laws for you, or to, Goldman's. There hasn't been a treasurer for the United States that didn't come directly from, or then after office go directly back to Goldman Sachs or J.P. Morgan or whatever for like 70 years.
Oh, yeah.
They've all been with these banks.
Yeah. So you know where their bread is buttered. You know where they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's all been stacked in that favor, and the rest of us have all been, I mean, we have Fox News. I saw a thing on Facebook the other day, was Fox News is rich people paying other rich people to tell middle-class people to blame poor people, or something like that. Which that's not just Fox News, but it's in general, that's kind of how things work.
Well, it seems to me that also, like in presidential elections, everybody says, I'm going to go to Washington and change Washington.
Yeah.
And guess what? They don't change Washington.
Yeah.
It's the system is, there's too much in place now that one person can't do it. We have a shrinking middle class, I think, and that's bad news too.
Yeah, that's really
they
bad.
say when the middle class disappears, that's when you have revolution.
Yeah, that's how it's always been.
Because people are desperate. Well, we've got a little over a minute left here. We've rambled on long enough. And no one wanted to join us. That's too bad. We could have heard some good opinions, or maybe the people at home were just so transfixed by our fascinating conversation that they
all agree with us.
They couldn't tear themselves away to get to the phone. Because that would have disrupted their listening to us. But, we atheists could go on, can't we?
Yeah.
And a variety of subjects too. We don't just stick to religion. We go on other things. But religion is. Most people like to talk to us about religion, don't they?
Yeah.
Especially when we meet them at the street fairs, and many of them ask us questions that they think are going to stump us, or that we've never heard before. We've heard them all before. I think we've pretty much heard them all. One kid did ask me, because we belong to Pennsylvania Nonbelievers, do I really believe it's not butter? So that was an unusual question. So I said, yeah, I like that stuff, so I can't believe it's not butter. But that was the only strange one we had. Well, we're just about out of time. Join us again in 2 weeks. If you can think of any questions, you can call us in and let us know what you think. But thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks. Back here on the Free Thought Forum. Tune in and see who's on, first of all.